Hey guys, real quick, this video is another clip taken from our control room membership community. This is where we talk about these types of things on a weekly and monthly and actually a daily basis. But if you are someone who is interested in starting or growing your studio business, I want to invite you to check out our free studio growth workshop. It's kicking off very soon. Just click the link in the description below to register early. We've got a free gift, some multi-tracks for you to download and mix for yourself and actually use on your own mixed portfolio, so you can start attracting clients now and be ready to hit the ground running when we start the workshop in a few days. All right, so check out that link and let's get to the video. All right, welcome to this week's frequency upgrade discussion on music, and this week's topic is going to be how to cut your mix revisions in half. So mix revisions, that whole process can be kind of annoying, kind of frustrating. Like you get through your part of the record and then you send it off to the client asking for their feedback, any changes to the mix or anything. And, sometimes it can just drag on and on. Like there's this huge list of changes and, things start morphing. You feel like you totally lose control of the mix and of the project, and it's starting to go in a direction you don't like, and you feel like the band is wrong. And it just takes all this extra time and all this extra stress. It's like an entirely additional mix process on top of what you've already done. But the mix revision process does not have to be painful or difficult or long. In fact, I believe that really your mix revisions you should be getting only a handful of kind of small adjustments, minor notes back from the band, and you should be able to get through a project with like a maximum of 3 mix revisions. I've done records, including like ones for like Silverstein and stuff, where literally I send the mixes and there's like one change in one of the songs and that's it. I mean, part of this has to do with, of course, improving over time as a mixer and all of that, but also it does have to do with the client too. Like the higher level clients, usually, they've hired you because they trust you and they're kind of going to go with your gut on stuff. That is a factor, but I don't think it's the main factor. I think that there are certain ways to handle this whole process that actually set you up to avoid lengthy mix revisions. So, for example, I just finished mixing a record for the band Auras. Here is the email they sent me with all of their mix notes. He said, here's the notes we compiled below. General mix notes, so these are across the entire album. Slightly louder synths, slightly louder bass, more heavy hollow sound. They gave me a reference on the bass. This was a little concerning because I thought, oh geez, the bass is wrong on the whole album. I messaged them after to follow up with just some more details. They just said, oh, the low end is perfect. We just want more of that kind of clanky, grindy sound. So it's like, okay, great. I added a dB or 2 of mid-range boost, a little bit more grit to the bass, turned it up like a half a dB, and they were happy with it. Very simple. They also said guitar down a little bit. That was a simple 30-second move, and more depth and wetness on the clean vocals. I just turned up the delay a little bit on the vocals. That's it. They were happy. And then they broke it down per song. So most of the songs here you can see, they said good, and the mix notes they did have, one of them was a vocal tuning error. One of them was, more effects on a transition part, more echo on a specific lyric, more clean or louder on a clean guitar part. Look at these 3 songs in a row, no changes. This song here, one of the guitar parts louder, different balance between all the synth layers. Another song good, and then these last 2 songs, again, just simple notes. Clean guitars up in the mix through this part, and that 257 drum build up, and the first snare is missing on like a quiet build up. So very simple mix notes, and this is the norm, guys. This is what I normally get. And by the way, I went through all of these and sent the next round of revisions with this, and then we had one more note on one of the songs, and that was it. Like that was it. Very simple. Like your mix revision process should be very mechanical, very like, oh, they want this guitar part up, okay, turn it up by a dB or half a dB or whatever. You should not be sent back into like creative mode where you're like trying to reimagine the mix during this process. So what I'm going to do is walk you through a little guide I put together. You may or may not have seen this, but either way, we're going to go more in depth into this. So this is my client approval and revisions guide. And basically these are some rules and some basically always do this, never do that rules for preparing your mixes to send to your clients to get their feedback. So we're going to go through these, and you might see some of these rules and guidelines that you might be breaking or violating right now, which is possibly leading you to having way more mix revisions than you need to. And these are mistakes. I learned this the hard way through the years, by the way. No one told me this. This is from years of going back and forth with bands, making what I found out later to be mistakes, and then adjusting my process and basically ending up with this. And this is how I deal with clients in the mix stage. And it's kind of hard at first. You got to be patient. You got to be methodical about this stuff, but it's really going to help wrap your projects up a lot quicker and make the revision process very easy. So let's get into it, okay? You can see here that I say, if you're regularly needing to make more than 3 revisions for clients, you're probably breaking one of these rules. And ideally, you should only have a few tiny changes to make for clients after sending your mix, just like I showed you, an actual feedback email from a band that I just mixed. So here are the rules here, all right? So before you send the mix, always check your mix on multiple speakers before sending it to clients. Now, why is this important? Well, you don't know what they're listening on, right? So if you just mix in your studio on your monitors and it sounds great, we all know that that doesn't mean it's perfect or that it sounds great in the car or on earbuds or whatever. Like, we already check our mix on other systems. But it's very simple. Just make sure you don't send it to them to check on other speakers. Like, you have to check it first. It's basically just making sure you're really happy with it before you send it. Don't ever send a mix being like, hey, I still got to check this in the car, but I'm sending it to you now anyway, so you can let me know how it sounds. Like, don't do that. Make sure you check it everywhere first, then do whatever changes you want to do before you send it to the client, okay? Next, never send an in-progress mix. So I did this early on. I think people kind of do this because you get excited, right? Let's say you start mixing a project, and on your first day, you don't quite finish the mix, but you get like 80% there, and you feel like it's really banging, like you're really on the right track. It sounds great. And the band's waiting to hear back, and so you're excited to send it to them. So you send them an in-progress mix. So you send an email with a link, and you say, hey guys, this is not quite done yet. It's maybe 80% done. I still have some tweaks to make, but check this out. I'm really excited about it. Let me know if you guys like it too. Guys, let's just say for what it is. In this case, if you do that, you're just looking for validation. It's kind of an ego thing. You're just looking for them to feel as good about it as you are, and you're looking for that validation. And that's a really bad thing to do, because now that's the first impression. Like, you can only make your first impression with your mix once on your client. So don't waste that first impression with something that you're not even finished with yet, So don't do this. Don't ever send an in-progress mix, okay? Next, never ask the client for feedback partway through the mix. Now, this basically is the same thing as never send an in-progress mix, but it's a little different. It's a little more specifically asking for feedback, at a midway point. So let's say you kind of finish the drums. You haven't really touched the vocals yet or the layers, but you've kind of got the drums and bass and guitars kind of where you want them, but you haven't done automation and effects and stuff. And then you might think it's a smart idea to think, okay, before I put in all this extra time, basically taking this mix to 100%, I'm going to send it to the band to make sure, I'm not way off track, because if I'm way off track here, then it's going to be way harder to change it later. And again, that is a really bad idea. Remember, you are the mixer. They are paying you to mix it. They don't know, they are not mixers. They don't know how to mix. They don't know how to see how everything works together. So if you ask them for feedback partway through the mix, basically, if you're sending them an incomplete mix and asking for their guidance, they're going to really lose faith in you, which is going to automatically lead to more revisions down the road, because now their confidence is down. So even if you send them something pretty good later, they're going to be second guessing it, right? Because you didn't have the confidence in the first place. And again, they don't know, right? They don't have the perspective on everything. They're not the ones dealing with all the tracks. Their job is not to give you feedback and to help you mix the song. You are supposed to mix the song. So this is a problem. Again, it's a first impression thing as well. Never ask the client for feedback partway through the mix. Okay, next. Never send a mix for approval until you are 100% satisfied. So if you still feel like it's not quite there, like you still need to work on this mix, don't send it. Going back to this Ors mix, I actually struggle a little bit with the bass, with the low end. It's super low tuning, some issues in the tracks, and I thought I had it good first, and I took it to the car. I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. I'm pretty happy. But the more I listened to it, I sat on it. I took that extra time before just rifling it off to the band. Took that extra time, listened to it a little bit more, and it's like, man, you know what? I'm not quite happy with the low end. It just wasn't sitting quite right. And so I actually went back and I basically, I saved that version, and then I did a completely new version of the bass. Like, I didn't change the rest of the mix, but I basically started from scratch on only the bass tracks, and actually ended up with something way better. Checked that in the car, and then I sent it to it. So basically the lesson is that you should be doing your own round of mix revisions before you send it to the band. And don't settle. Like, if you are not 100% satisfied, then make sure you go back until you get to the point where you're like, all right, I feel like I've done my best on this. Now I can move forward and get feedback from the band. Okay, always do a fake mastering job to get the volume in the ballpark of finished records. So, as we all know, final records, mastered records are really loud now. And basically, if you send something that's not kind of in that ballpark, not only is it's going to be confusing to the band because it's going to be so much quieter. So as they're comparing it, they're going to compare it to other records, like their favorite records. So when they do that and your mix is way quieter, it's just, we can't help it. Our brain just automatically assumes that louder is better. So, some very experienced, sophisticated artists, this might not affect them, but generally it is going to impact their impression. And also, if you're working on heavy music, like, mastering really, it does impact the sound. It makes everything sound more upfront, more aggressive, because you really, pancake the mix, to be honest. And that does change the sound. It adds a lot more energy. So you don't want to leave it up to their imagination what it's going to sound like in the end. So I always do what I call a fake master, or I call it like a reference mix. So it's not the same mix I'm going to send to the mastering engineer. It's got additional loudness. I don't push it all the way to what the mastering is going to be. So let's say my mastering engineer is probably going to put it up to, minus 10, minus 9 dB RMS. I'm sending it to the band at like minus 12, minus 13. So it's not all the way up there, because I don't want to like start negatively affecting my mix. But I just use the Slate FGX plugin, and it has the A/B settings. And so I just have the A setting, which is what I'm actually mixing into, which is just doing a little bit of loudness. And then I have the B setting, which turns it up like a few dB or 6 dB or something, and starts to get it into that ballpark. And that's what I send to the band. I want it to be in the range of what they can expect it to sound like after mastering, and that helps a lot. Lastly, avoid sending one song at a time. Send 2 or 3 songs together, and that forces the client to spend more time listening before making judgments. So if you finish the first song and you send that off right away, they've only got one song to listen to, and they might be surprising. Maybe you've gone in a different direction. I don't know. You don't want them to just spend 3 minutes listening and then giving you their feedback. So if you send more songs, 2, 3, even more, that forces them to really sit down and listen to your mix, what you've created, across a longer period of time. It forces them to just sit with it for longer. Let them digest it. Let them think about it. Let them see how it feels. And I think you're going to get better feedback from that versus just one song. Again, and it also just calms them. It's like, okay, these songs, they all sound like just as good, rather than sending one song. And it's like, if there's some changes, it's like, no, like now he's mixing all these other songs and we don't even like this one, or something like that. But if you send a couple at a time, again, they're probably going to feel better about it because they spend more time getting used to it. And, it just kind of reassures them. It's like, okay, like each song is like sounding pretty good, and there's just a few minor changes and it's going to be okay. So send multiple songs. I never send just one song. I always send like the first 2 or 3 at least, if not more. And again, this takes patience. I totally get it when you feel like you've got a good mix and you want to share it with the band. I really get that feeling, and you want the validation, like you want to know that you're on the right track. But trust me, be patient, finish a couple more songs, because that even might, once you kind of get into some other songs, it might make you go back and tweak the first one too, and just gives a better result overall. So for those reasons, send a couple at a time. Okay, now when you finally are ready to send the mix, so you've gone through all of these things, always do this, never do that, always do that. Now it's time to send the mix for feedback. So here's the key, guys. When you send that email, you give the artist guidance on how to make notes. So you send an email and you say, hey guys, here are the first couple mixes. Give it a listen. By the way, just make sure, take a couple days. There's no rush to get back with me with the notes. So take a couple days to listen. And also make sure all the band members have heard it before you send me any notes. And you ask for here's the key. You ask for a single message or a single document or whatever, a single email of feedback notes. You do not want to split your feedback across all these different things. Remember again that Aura's email I showed you? Notice that was one email and it was all of their notes in just one email. That's because I deliberately told them how to give me the notes. So I didn't just say, here's the mix, let me know what you think, get back to me with your notes. Because what's going to happen is whoever gets the email first, they're going to listen. They might email you back right away with the notes. And then, 3 days later, the bass player finally listens to it and they've got their own notes. And then they send you that. And then it's like this confusing back and forth. That's really not how you want to do it. You have this long stream of emails. So you say, here are the songs. By the way, guys, take a few days to listen across different systems, and then discuss it as a band. That's what I usually say is get together as a band, work out any of your notes between you guys, and then just send me one master list of mixed revisions. And that really gets it in their head. It's like, okay, if the band disagrees on something, let's say the drummer wants their snare up, but everyone else thinks it's fine, or the guitar player thinks the leads are too quiet, but everyone else likes it where they are, they can meet together and they can work that out on their own and then send it to you. So you're not sending different versions so that they can make decisions. Like that's the worst thing that can happen, is that you make a change for just one person and then you send it back and it's like that person likes it, but no one else does. So then they ask for a new version and it keeps going on and on. Don't do that. So, again, just give them the guidelines like that, especially making sure, and I spell it out, like I said, very clearly, make sure everyone hears it, discuss your notes as a band together, and then send me one final list. That's literally exactly what I say. And it works really, really well. Bands always respect that and go with that. It just makes sense and it makes it easier for them. Next one here, let the mix speak for itself. So I used to do this too. Like, don't write 3 paragraphs explaining why you made certain decisions. The more confident you are, the more the client will trust you. Remember, this goes back to what I said up here at the start, not sending for feedback halfway through a mix or not sending a mix that's still in progress. You want to have confidence. You want to portray that, have that come across. That's going to let the artist trust your decisions more, okay? And maybe something that strikes them as surprising, they might give it more time to get used to it because they trust your confidence, right? So let the mix speak for itself. I used to send mixes and be like, sometimes I'd say, oh, I did this thing, or I thought this part would sound better if I muted this track, and then, I added something new, and then, I decided to make the drums sound like this because XYZ reasons. Like don't do that. Don't explain it. Literally just say, here are my mixes, check it out. Give those guidelines, like I said, for revisions, and that's it. Let the mix speak for itself. Even when I've made drastic changes, like literally removing parts from a mix, I don't even say anything. I just send them the mix and say, this is the mix. Let the mix speak for itself. Let them react to it. Don't try to influence or guide their thoughts about it. It doesn't work. It's not going to work. Some technical things here. Just use a simple service like Dropbox. I export MP3s at I think 320, and I just upload it to Dropbox and I send them a shared link or a shared folder. That's it. And I name the mixes clearly. So this is my naming convention here. I just say song title, mix ref, date. That's it. And once we get into revisions, instead of mix reference, instead of that, it says mix rev, R-E-V, for mix revision. It'll be mix rev 1, mix rev 2, depending on how many revisions, and always the date. So we always know what is the newest version, okay? So again, here is a sample template you can use. I'm going to make this file available for you guys, by the way. But here's a sample email you can send. Hey, here are my mixes for the first 3 songs. Take a day or 2 to listen and digest everything. Check it out on different speakers, etc. Wait until everyone has had a chance to listen and combine all your notes into one master list before sending it to me. Thanks. Very simple. You let it speak for itself. You give them guidelines, and that's it. Now, let's wrap this up, guys, with just how to actually handle the revisions when they come back. So number 1, let go of your pride, okay? Remember, this is not your song or album. So don't dismiss one of their ideas that they give you without trying it first. And there's been many times where I've got mixed revisions and I'm like, I don't want to do that. The snare is perfect. I don't want to turn it down, something like that, whatever it is. I'll have that thought, but then I'll just try it anyway and be like, oh, okay. Yeah, I see what they're coming from. That's a good idea. So don't let your pride get in the way. Even if there's some changes, make sure that you just try out what they're talking about and see if it works. And you've already done, if you followed all those other steps, you've already got it to where you want it to be. And now you allow them in to kind of tweak it and guide it a little bit more. I also have here, side with the artist on small issues so that you can fight for the big ones. Like, for example, if they want louder keys in a part, that's fine. Get the keys louder. But if they ask you something ridiculous, like put flanger on the whole mix, you're going to fight for that and say, I don't think that's a good idea. But if you're always fighting them on everything, they're going to get frustrated. So obviously that whole flanger thing is a joke. It's a little bit over dramatic, but you get the point. If there's something that you think is really going to hurt their mix, then you want to kind of say, okay, guys, like, are you sure about this? Here's why I think this might be a bad idea. But if you're not giving them their way on smaller things that really don't matter either way, then there's going to be issues there. So put your ego aside. Next here, follow their request exactly. Again, you already worked hard. You did everything you wanted before you sent it. So revision should be fast and mechanical. I said this off the top. You do not want to get into like a creative thing where you're like remixing the song from scratch or something and really spending time consuming, doing time consuming revisions. Like basically when I do revisions, it's like I'm not creative at all in revisions. Like I'm literally just looking at the notes. Hey, can you turn the bass up? Okay, I turn it up by half a dB. How does that sound? No, they probably want it more. I turn it up by a dB. Okay, cool. It's literally that mechanical. Like I'm not even listening to like the whole song unless there's something like that's a bigger change, but I'm just going part by part. Like if they say at 1 minute and 32 seconds, turn this vocal line up, I go there, I turn it up by a little bit. I don't make huge adjustments, by the way. I'm usually like half a dB or a dB on stuff. I just do that and then I move on and I send them the revision. So this should be not really a creative process. This is more of a mechanical process. All right. And then lastly, we just some notes on mixed revisions here. And then lastly, for your own sake, if you're making major changes that affect the core of the mix, like changing the low end of the bass by a lot or something like that, make a copy in case you need to go back later. You never know. Maybe you don't want to get into a point where you do your original mix and they send a revision and you start altering your session and then you're like, I went too far, I need to go back. But you've lost it. You've already changed it. That's not a good thing. You want to keep the original version, and you never know. Like this is extremely rare. Actually, I don't know if it's ever happened, but you don't want to be in this situation where you do a major revision and then the band hears it and they're like, actually, we like your original one better. You don't want to have to create that. You just want to go back to that. So hopefully, guys, that advice helps you really cut down on your mixed revision time. If you're struggling with, or you're getting frustrated with you're always having tons of revisions, it might be because you're not handling the process in the right way. So these are some tips, again, hard fought, learning hard lessons over years of going through this with dozens and dozens of different bands, maybe hundreds of bands through this process. And I've really got it down now. I think if you follow these guidelines here, you're going to get to a similar situation, or you're going to get to the same point as me, where now mixed revision process is very easy. You usually just do one round, maybe two max, and then that's it. And they're very small, simple changes. So follow these guidelines here, and hopefully that helps, guys. So again, would love if we can have a discussion of this. If you have more questions about this process, or if there's things that you have identified and you're like, oh geez, I was doing that wrong, I'm really going to try to change it next time, please comment below, share your insight, your breakthrough, and your biggest aha from this video with the group so that we can all learn and benefit more from this. All right, guys, talk to you later.